Hello everyone and welcome to Drive Steady. My name is Andy and in today's video I want to talk a little bit about the C8 Corvette, specifically the real exciting news about the higher performance model, the Z06. Before getting started, a big thank you to everyone who subscribes to our channel and watches our videos. If this is your first time stopping by, consider hitting the subscribe button to stay up to date with all of our content. Before talking about the Z06, I want to segue into it by talking about the base C8 Corvette. The C8 Corvette has been announced for some time now, and it's unfortunate that it's been delayed and all of these people have had to wait for their cars. Speaking of unfortunate, how about that poor C8 Corvette that was left cold outside in the winter around the snow with the wheels stolen off of it on the side of the road? I thought the days of stealing wheels were behind us, but I guess not. Anyway, the delay in the C8 production has given me some time to think about the C8 and formulate an opinion about it. While kicking around the C8 Corvette, I was thinking about things such as, is it worth it for me to trade in my Shelby GT350 for it? What type of spec would I get? Is it a special car? And I must say that after some thought, I'm not really that excited about the base level Corvette as I thought I would be. I feel like it's not that special in the sense that it's missing something that draws me to it. For example, the LT2 engine is similar to the LT1 from the previous generation C7. There is no manual transmission. Being an exterior color guy, I'm not too crazy about the colors being offered in the C8. Some of the options are too expensive. I ended up speccing one on Chevrolet's website and it came out to about $75,000 to $77,000. And for these reasons, I feel like there's something missing with the C8 Corvette, at least the base version. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of Corvette and I appreciate the Corvette for what it stands for and the leap in performance the mid-engine transition is going to make for the Corvette brand. But I don't know, man. There's just something missing there. There's something missing from drawing me to it. I don't know. I just don't feel this attachment. Let me know in the comments below if you feel the same way. Now the really exciting news I wanted to talk about is the upcoming higher performance trim level, which will possibly and most likely be called the Z06. When I saw the C8 Corvette in person on its dealer tour, the first thing I said was, it needs a wide body. I've always been fond of wide body versions of cars, especially the Corvette. I've always liked the Grand Sport, the Z06, the ZR1 models much more than the narrow body base versions. Obviously, the wide body is functional for aerodynamics and increases the track for better handling, but I believe it also enhances the look quite significantly. So one of the reasons why I'm excited about this is that the recent spy shots of the upcoming performance level, or the Z06, whatever you want to call it, appears to have wide fenders. So I'm really happy about that. The second reason why I'm excited about the Z06 is the possibility that it's going to have a 5.5 liter flat plane crank V8 engine. I'm sure everybody has seen this video at this point, but here it is again. Is it me or does it seem weird to see a Corvette make this kind of noise? A Corvette usually sounds like this. Or this. But anyway, it's exciting to see the Z06 might get a flat plane crank engine, and I wanted to take a second and talk about this flat plane crank engine a little bit. I've driven several supercars on and off of the track, from the likes of the Ferrari 458, the 488, the Lamborghini Gallardo, etc., and all of these cars have had flat plane crank engines. I've somewhat grown fond of the flat plane crank engine, especially its exhaust and its high revving nature. Having owned a Shelby GT350, which also has a flat plane crank engine, has enhanced that and probably even spoiled me a little, kind of making me a snob in the sense that after owning the GT350, I am no longer interested in cars that I normally would have been prior to having the GT350. The GT350 provides such an experience because of the flat plane crank engine and the sounds it produces. Let alone the feel of the shifter and the neutral handling. We recently did a review of the Mercedes-AMG GTR, and while it's a $180,000 car and sounds amazing, it doesn't sound as good as the Shelby GT350, in my humble opinion. Sure, the AMG GTR is a cool looking car and probably performs better, but the experience in the GT350 is something else. For example, I used to be big into BMW M cars. Now, not so much. Don't get me wrong, I don't have any bias towards cars. I pretty much love them all. However, when it comes to buying something for myself, I do have opinions. But I'm not going to turn this into a Shelby GT350 Homer Fest, so I'm just going to keep talking about this C8 Z06 here. Now, my hope is that the C8 Z06 provides the same type of experience that the GT350 does. I'm over the fact that the C8 Corvette won't get a manual, and I think that's fine. I've been able to enjoy an automated transmission before. For example, I had an E46 M3 with an SMG, and I was probably one of very few people who actually liked the SMG transmission. Anyway, going back to the C8, I'm over the manual transmission topic, like I said, but I feel like if it gets the flat plane crank engine, that alone, with the exhaust note tied to a flat plane crank engine and along with the mid-engine factor, will make it something that will lure me in, something that was missing when I was talking about the C8 base Corvette earlier. I hope the Z06 isn't too expensive, but I do think that it'll probably have a base price of around $77,000 to $80,000, which I think would be a huge win, especially if it gets something exotic like a high revving flat plane crank V8. I hope that the Z06 name goes back to being a lightweight track focused car. The C7 Z06 was supposed to be that, but I feel like the ZR1 with its huge wing and mega downforce took that crown. With that, I wouldn't mind if it had a cool looking spoiler like the ZR1 does, but not something so racerish like the C8R. Now, going back to the engine, there were some early talks saying that it would be a twin turbo flat plane crank engine. I'm asking for the cake and eating it here too, but I wish it was a pure engine and didn't have forced induction. There's just something about the turbo setup that kind of strips away the exhaust note and the experience. I felt this when I drove the Ferrari 458, which is naturally aspirated, and the 488. Even though they're both flat plane crank V8s, the Ferrari 488 has a twin turbo setup, and I felt like it took away from that experience and the specialness of the 458 engine. And finally, I hope it still maintains the Targa top, because I think the Targa top is one of the coolest features of the Corvette. What do you think? Any chance all these things hit? Now, if the Z06 does indeed get the flat plane crank engine, I can just imagine everybody saying, "Oh, it's a Ferrari, it's a Ferrari." And I hope that doesn't happen, because a Corvette is such a special and cool car that it should be on its own and not compared to a cliche such as a cheap Ferrari look-alike or a performance value. I hope the Z06 is an experience and a driver's car. Can you imagine having a high-revving, flat plane crank V8 with a Targa top wearing a Corvette badge? Now, how cool would that be? Now, the question is, would I buy a Z06? Specifically the Z06 that I was just talking about. Most probably. Just to give you a perspective of some cars that currently have my interest are the Camaro ZL1 1LE, of course with a manual, the new Porsche GT3, the 2018 and 2019 models with the 4-liter naturally aspirated engine and a manual transmission, the Corvette ZR1, the one from the C7 generation with the ZTK package. I'm also interested in a couple older cars, the Generation 2 Dodge Viper, an SL600, the one from the R129 generation, and a C4 Corvette ZR1. So it'll be interesting to see what the Z06 brings to the table in this upcoming year or so. Now, one last point before closing the video, and thank you for sticking around up until this point, is that Porsche and Corvette have been going at it for some time now, and I think it'll continue with the Z06 because it'll draw comparisons to the new 992 generation 911 GT3. And I think this will hold true because there's a camouflaged version of this high performance model, of course, let's call it the Z06, sitting next to a GT2 RS. Now, if the Z06 has the performance of a GT2 RS and Chevrolet is using that as a benchmark, holy crap, I could just imagine how the Z06 is going to perform. But the question then becomes, what's the price of the Z06, and would someone buy a Z06 over a 992 or even a 991.2 GT3? Because remember, the 991.2 GT3 has a manual transmission. The Z06 probably is not. The first thing to see is what Porsche does with the new GT3, how much it's going to cost, if it's going to stay naturally aspirated, or even if it's going to have the option of a manual transmission. But if the C8 Corvette Z06 was to have most of the things I mentioned earlier, it's going to be hard to turn it down. I think it would be an extremely special car. What do you think? Don't forget to check out our channel page for more content and our online store to pick yourself up a Drive Steady t-shirt so you can help support our channel. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Until next time, drive steady.